Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the second of a two-part lecture on economics and life harmony. This part will deal with the Ghazali Project. We briefly summarize part 1, Western Clash and Islamic Harmony. There are fundamental differences between the European conceptions and Islamic ones. These concern the meaning of knowledge. Europe values knowledge of the external world, which creates power and wealth. Islam values knowledge of our internal world, our soul and our nafs, which brings us closer to God and leads to success in the akhirah. Europe defines success as being conquest, colonization, and exploitation to generate wealth, while Islam defines real success as the success of the Day of Judgment. And to achieve this success, we must serve the creation of God, thought of as the family of God, for the sake of the love of God. So these are radically different conceptions of knowledge and success. The fundamental problem we face is that due to global conquest and colonization, the Islamic civilization has absorbed Western definitions of knowledge and success. And in order to acquire power and wealth, we think that we need to acquire Western knowledge. But this is a deception. Actually, Western knowledge is toxic. It prevents our development in all dimensions. And if we strive for real success of the Akhirah and strive to please Allah, Allah Ta'ala will give us success both in this world and in the Akhirah. How can we understand the value of the final message of God, the Quran, to mankind and consider it as the road to success and salvation? To achieve this result, we need to do a lot of work, and that work is called the Ghazali Project. The first step is to acquire strong faith in the teachings of Islam. The second is to reject Western philosophy, and the third is to use the teachings of Islam to construct an alternative path, to rebuild knowledge, and to apply it to create social change.
So that's the basic outline of the background. Now I want to talk about the Ghazali Project and how we can use this to launch an Islamic revolution today. So there are 3 steps in the Ghazali Project. The first one is deliverance from doubt. Today we are not sure about this and the other. There are so many different versions of Islam, and also there are the claim of the West that we are the superior, we are the strongest, we are the mightiest. So how can we find out the truth? So for this purpose, there is no other option but Al-Haq, which is the name of Allah. The only way to get to the truth is to build a connection with the creator of the universe and acquire a strong faith. So one of the key realization of Imam al-Ghazali is that certainty is a condition of the heart. It occurs upon illumination of the heart by the nur of Allah. And this nur is given to all sincere seekers of the truth if they follow the rules for searching for the truth. And nur gives us is a light. It shows us the path, but it doesn't mean that no struggle is required. Once you see the path, then it is up to you to follow. The path can be difficult, the path can be easy, and you have to put in your own personal effort to traverse the path. So the nur is the light, but the effort and the struggle, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. So juhud fi sabilillah is left up to us, but the nur is given by Allah. So how can we arrive at this certainty? How can we arrive at this nur? How can we arrive at this illumination of the heart? There are certain rules, there are certain procedures we have to follow, and there are 4 key elements. One of them is shukr. that we have to be grateful to Allah for all of the gifts that Allah Ta'ala has given us. He has given us life, He has given us health, He has given us a mind to contemplate, He has given us a ruh which is sensitive to the nur of Allah. So we have to, He has given us the message. The message of guidance. So the second thing is, if there is anything which goes wrong, then we have to make ruju, we have to make sabr, and we have to say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. If there is a problem coming from the past which has been caused by our sins and our neglect, for that we have the tool of istighfar. And for problems arising in the future, we have to seek protection of Allah. So in all situations, we have to talk to Allah. Basically, we have to create a connection with Allah. Oh my Allah, help me in this situation, guide me to the right actions, help me to complete the right action, create the good consequences of this action, and protect me from the bad consequences of any action, of mine or of others. So by continuously talking to Allah, we can build our connection to Allah. So Allah Ta'ala has promised that He will take the believers from darkness to light, and those who reject the message, they will be led from the light to darkness. So today, because we have been trained in the West, we have learned the opposite. To us it seems like they are in the light and we are in the darkness. This is because they have redefined, the West has redefined the understanding of light and darkness, and what they call light is really darkness, and what they call darkness is really light. So basically, this is the Western knowledge appears very, very shining, very fascinating, but this is deceptive, because in the end of times, Dajjal will appear to have power over life and death, and he will ask to be worshipped like God, and he will have a heaven which will be bright and shiny outside, but the inside will be hell. And he will also have a Jahannam, which will appear dark and deadly on the outside, but inside will be Jannah. So this is the thing, that what appears to be something is different from what it really is. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that something may be good for you, but you may dislike it, and something may be bad for you, but you may like it. So what it seems to be is different from what the reality is. So in order to understand, we have to go beyond the surface and look to the inner reality, and we have to hunt for the signs of God, because these are the pointers to God. Allah Ta'ala says that in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and the day are the signs for those of understanding. So whoever desires to do so, let him find a pathway. So Allah Ta'ala wants us to search for the path to God. And so we have to create in our heart the desire to find God. And the mind is just one of the many tools for this purpose. And the prayer coming from the heart is the strongest instrument for creating connection to God. If I want to find God, I have to pray to Allah from my heart. So, as we move towards Allah Ta'ala, there are three stages of spiritual progress. There is nafs ammara, and there is nafs lawwama, and there is nafs mutma'inna. So the nafs ammara is exactly what economics calls homo economicus. This is rational behavior. You just maximize the pleasure that you get in this world. You don't worry about the akhirah. Nafs lawwama is one stage higher than this. So this stage, you are aware of the problem of this maximization of pleasure. You understand that if I look for pleasure and I take something from my brother, he will feel pain. And so if I am connected to humanity, if I am connected to my Creator, and if I have love, rahmatul lil alameen, then I will not like to hurt other people, because that will hurt me. So then when we do this, then we feel the pain of others, and then we start saying, oh, realizing that this is wrong, and this is called nafs al-lawwama. And once we start realizing things are wrong and we start not doing them, we start doing things which will please God, then we reach to nafs mutmainnah, which becomes happy when Allah Ta'ala is happy. And this is called the stage of ihsan, living in the presence of God, and there is a reference to a talk about this. So when we look for certainty, this is the deliverance from doubt, the first stage, then there are two types of evidence. There is the internal evidence which is within us, and this is most convincing because it touches the heart. So this is very simple. If we just ask Allah Ta'ala for guidance sincerely, Allah Ta'ala will open our hearts. And so we make the required efforts to make dua. We ask forgiveness for past sins. We must ask with humility, and we must recognize that nur of the guidance is the most precious gift of Allah. And we must make shukr for whatever we have been given of the guidance. But there is also external evidence. This is the evidence for the mind. This is not so important, but because we are trained in the West, so we think that the external evidence is more important. Actually, this is not more important, but today, because we are influenced by Western education, so we have to look at that evidence too. But this evidence, external evidence, is also very, very strong. First, it is known that there was a time when there was no universe. Then the universe came into existence. So we can ask the question, what was the cause of the creation of the universe? Obviously, the cause cannot be found within the universe because the universe itself was created. What is created cannot cause its own creation. So the cause for the creation of the universe must lie outside the universe. So we know that there was a creator of the universe, and we know that the creator is Allah. So if somebody rejects Allah, then he has to answer this question, who created the universe? Today there is no answer that the scientists have. So atheists have faith that someday the scientists will find a cause. So they have this faith in the unseen. They accuse Muslims of having faith, but in unseen, without empirical evidence, which is actually they have faith that someday scientists will find a cause. But actually, we have the wahi and we have the reason on our side. There is a even more spectacular argument discovered by scientists. This is called the fine-tuning argument. See, everything in the universe is exactly designed to allow life to exist. For example, the water is designed in such a way that when it freezes, it becomes larger. Everything else, when you freeze it, it becomes smaller in volume. But water, it becomes larger in volume. Because water becomes larger in volume, it floats to the top. And this is what makes life possible. Similarly, if you look at the constant of gravity, if you look at many different constants of physics, then very, very small changes would make human life impossible. So basically, you can say that the planet has been precision engineered to allow for human existence. So how can there be precision engineering without an engineer? Nobody knows the answer to this question, and the atheist scientists are very puzzled by this. So how did life come into existence? The simplest form of life is the cell. It is the simplest thing which can replicate itself. But the cell is extremely complex. Nobody thinks that it appeared by accident. So if you break down the cell, you can ask, there are proteins which go into the cell. Now, how is a protein manufactured by the cell? This is built into the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid. this has the information which is coded into it, which basically gives instructions for the manufacture of the proteins. Now, the instructions for manufacture of one protein fill thousands and thousands of books. So, we are saying that these thousands of books came into existence by accident. Actually, when mathematicians calculated the probability of this, they say it's impossible. So there is a lecture you can see. If you just type in mathematical challenges to Darwin's theory, you will find this, that this cannot happen. Random selection cannot produce information. Just like, if you have read some statistics, you know that if you put monkeys typing on a typewriter, they can write Shakespeare. There is a probability. But this probability is so low that you can go billions and billions of years, but it will not happen. And similarly, like this, although there is a probability that that a house is constructed just by trees falling down and everything falling into the right place, it just does not happen. It cannot happen. So basically, there were two scientists, Watson and Crick, who discovered DNA. And Francis Crick, who is himself an atheist, he says that an honest man can only state that the origin of life is a miracle, because there are so many things that need to be true in order to make it work. So it cannot happen by accident. So then how did it happen? Since Crick says that there is no God, so he has to find another solution. So what did he say? He said that, well, there is some planet with very intelligent life, and they sent a rocket ship to Mars. They sent a rocket ship to Earth, and in this rocket ship there was some organic material, and so that started life, because he cannot believe that life started by itself. But now this is just a very stupid solution, because if there are such intelligent extraterrestrials, then who created them? So this question, this solution does not solve anything. So this is a very stupid solution, because you want to deny God, so you just create confusion. All right, so we did step one. Basically, step one is to acquire faith in Islam. Today, the biggest problem is that we have faith in the West. We think that our problems can be solved by the West, not by the Quran and Hadith. So the first step is to believe that Allah Ta'ala's final message is complete and perfect. So once we believe that, then the second step is to reject the Western knowledge. This is not the path. Today the Muslims believe that the path to guidance is via the West. The Western education will lead us to guidance, will lead us to success. So the step two is the Hafatul Falasifa. So because we have great respect for the West, we have failed to reject many absurd Western theories. So the second step is to recognize the falsehood of Western philosophy. So the origin of the problem lies with the Bible. The Bible is at the bedrock of Western civilization, even though Christianity has been rejected, and today in the Europe most people don't really believe in the Bible, don't believe in Christianity, but still the fundamental issues created by the Bible continue to guide modern West. And that's something which very few people understand. So I'm trying to explain this. So today, if we want to understand how did Christianity become a religion today, Bart Ehrman has a lot of books on this and videos and posts, and this is very important to read. So one of these books is Forgeries and Counter-Forgeries and Use of Literary Deceit in Early Christian Polemics. So in the New Testament, there are 4 major Gospels: according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Supposedly, these were the disciples of Isa alayhi salam. These all three of these are the earliest Bibles. They were written about 40 years after the passing away of Prophet Isa alayhi salam. Now, none of these three have anything which says that Isa alayhi salam is God. In all of them, Isa alayhi salam makes dua to God. He says that I am weak, the Father is strong. So, there are two things. First of all, none of these claim godhood. And the other thing which is more surprising is that none of these were actually written by the disciples. So the Gospel according to Matthew was not written by Matthew, Gospel to Mark was not written by Mark, and Gospel by Luke was not written by Luke. And this is fairly well established among Christians who have studied Bible. The fourth Gospel according to John was written 100 years after Isa alayhi salam, and only in this Bible you find that Isa alayhi salam is claiming to be God. So this is very strange, because the early accounts, Isa alayhi salam is not God, but later Isa alayhi salam says that he is God. So if Isa alayhi salam actually said that he is God, then how come the Matthew and the Luke and the Mark, none of them mention this? So this is one problem. And the second problem is that the Bible says that there is only one God. And Isa alayhi salam is calling upon God. And Isa alayhi salam himself is God. So how can there are two gods or there are one God? This is a big problem. Now, I'm not interested in talking about Trinity, but what I'm interested in talking about is that this created a big problem for Christians, because they had to solve this problem. How can you have 1 equals 3? How can you have three gods? After all, then there was Father, Son, and then they brought in the Holy Ghost, which is Ruhul Amin or Jibreel alayhi salam, into the picture. So all three of them became parts of God, because you see their gospel says that in the beginning was the Word. So there is the Father, and then there is the messenger who sent the message to Isa alayhi salam. So all three of these became God. Now, but there is only one God. So this creates a problem, a logical problem. How can there be three gods, and at the same time these three gods are one God? So in the early Christianity there are many different positions, and many different ways of trying to solve this problem. But there is no solution. You cannot, regardless of what you think, one cannot be equal to three. So among the many different positions, people started forging documents. So somebody wrote the Gospel according to Matthew to support one position. And there were so many there were hundreds of different Gospels which were written. And the problem is not that you can write something. I can write something supporting an argument. But the problem was that they said that this Gospel has been written by Matthew, which was not true. So the fabrication, this was said in order to give authenticity, in order to give proof, in order to provide an argument for one of the positions. So one of the things that arose in early Christianity is that you can tell a lie. You can say that this is manuscript, this Bible comes from Matthew in order to support the truth. So we can forge documents. We can fake. We can say that I was a disciple of Isa alayhi salam. Therefore, my word is true, even though you're not a disciple. In fact, Paul actually claimed exactly this. He said that he never actually was a disciple, but he said that Isa alayhi salam came to me in a dream and he told me all of this. And all of these things were lies that he has made up. And so basically the principle that you can tell lies in order to support the truth became part of Christianity. And this is in contrast with Islam, who says that you have to tell the truth even if it is against your own self or your parents or your and you have to be just and fair even to your enemies. So Islam has a very high concept and standard of truth, whereas in Christianity they said you can tell lies to support the truth. So another problem that was caused was that the elites of the church, the popes and the cardinals, they knew that these Bibles, they contain a lot of garbage, but they said that we cannot tell this to the masses, so we have to protect them. So there are two types of truth. There's a truth for the elites and then upper classes, and there's a different truth for the masses. One of the really big problems is that there was a fundamental distortion of reasoning. Truth was known in advance. You have to prove 3 equals 1. And now you have to use complicated and false reasoning to prove something which is impossible. And this created a fundamental flaw in the logical process which continues to this day. We use the axiomatic method today. We proceed from known truths and then we use reason to argue to conclusion. But the problems are hidden in the axioms, but you focus attention on the reasoning process and you divert attention from the axioms. So this methodology is used to prove all sorts of illogical and false things, as I will explain later. So basically all of the enormous amount of effort that was spent in creating logic to prove that 3 equals 1, this gave them practice on how you can prove falsehoods. And this methodology of deception is in use today to prove all sorts of illogical and false and horribly disastrous things. And this is taken as knowledge. So falsehood and deception is at the heart of Western knowledge as a whole. So to summarize, there are 3 flaws in Western reasoning. One is that you can lie in order to support the truth. Today we have many examples of major scientists who have told lies and corrupted their experimental results in order to match their theories. Today somebody did examination and you look at current published research, but the experiments they say that we did cannot be replicated. So they lied in describing their results. There are many statements which have double meanings. One is for the general public and one is for the specialized elites. And the methodology of research is distorted. Toxic ideas are packaged into axioms with double meaning, and then you focus on complex mathematics and reasoning, and you don't discuss what the axiom says. So this is the way to deceive the public into believing false ideas. So I will explain these by one philosopher called Immanuel Kant. He has been called the greatest Western philosopher. He wrote a book called The Critique of Pure Reason, and no one understands what he wrote. There are many books which say that this is what he said, and the other one says this is what he said. Nobody agrees on what he said or even why it matters. So this is because when you say 1 equals 3, then you cannot find a right argument for it. And so basically all of the things that he is saying are ridiculous, but he is making such complex and convoluted arguments that no one can understand what it is, and as a result everybody thinks that he is such a great philosopher. So I'm going to explain in very simple terms what Kant wanted to do, Basically, in times of Kant, Newton's law was very popular and very famous, that the law of universal gravitation. So what he wanted to do was to prove this law as a logical truth. So he found that this cannot be done because Newton's law was not actually true, in fact, but also you cannot prove a law by looking at facts, because you can only see some things. But like you can see that the sun is coming up every day, but from this you cannot prove that the sun will come up tomorrow. This is known as the problem of induction. So reason by itself is completely powerless to prove anything. So how did Kant prove this? He said that these laws are synthetic a priori knowledge. That is, we already know them in advance. So basically, how do we prove that Newton's law of universal gravitation by logic? By assuming that it is true. And this is done in large numbers of volumes. Similarly, there's this Russell and Whitehead Principia Mathematica. They take one whole volume to set up set theory, and in the beginning of the second volume, the first theorem is 1 plus 1 equals 2. So in order to prove 1 plus 1 equals 2, it takes them 350 pages of very complicated mathematics, which nobody really can understand without very, very specialized and advanced training. And what do they come up with? 1 plus 1 equals 2. So like this, Western knowledge is based on deception. It is based on making people think that you are doing something very, very powerful, when in fact it's just foolish. So what about this Kant? He is known as the greatest of the moral philosophers. But what is morality? He said that Native Americans are like animals. He said that black Africans cannot reason. They are irrational, but they can be trained. He actually explained how we can design whips which will inflict the maximum amount of pain without killing in order to train them. He said that Asians are incapable of creative thought. So this is the greatest moral philosopher of Europe. But this is not how he is known. He says that his biographer says that Kant defends the universal rights of man, provided that he is a possessor of reason. So here is something that I said, that statements are ambiguous. They have a specialized meaning. So if you and I read that, we say, oh, Kant is saying that every human being has rights, because we say that, okay, everyone can reason. But what Kant is really saying is that possessor of reason is European. Only Europeans can reason. So universal rights are only rights for Europeans. So the statement has two meanings. One meaning is for the average man. You and I will think that Kant is saying something to defend rights of all human beings. But the Europeans understand that he's only talking about Europeans, because the only Europeans are possessors of reason. So this kind of problem arises throughout Western philosophy. For example, Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, and there is a huge argument of many pages which explains why you prove that. He is the father of Western philosophy. But if you look at it, I think is possible only if I exist. I mean, how can you think if you don't exist? So the premise, I think, already assumes I exist. So from this to conclude I exist is trivial. There is no big logic required. So this convoluted logic is characteristic of the West. Many of the passages of Descartes are plagiarized from Ghazali. Another contribution of Descartes is known as the Cartesian coordinates, which are really a major contribution to mathematics, but this is plagiarized from Ibn al-Haytham. Similarly, Copernicus plagiarized from Muslim astronomers. He is known as the revolutionary, but nobody knows the name of Ibn Shatir, who was actually the one who wrote the book that Copernicus copied. Similarly, discovery of calculus is attributed to Newton and Leibniz, but this was discovered by Indian mathematicians and developed by Muslims and borrowed by these people. And the methodology of borrowing is also known, and the hiding of the roots is also known. So finally, we come to the step 3 of Ihya Ulumuddin. So the first step is revival of faith. The second step is to see through the deception of Western knowledge. And the third step is to replace Western knowledge by the religious sciences of Islam. So there is my book called, my paper called Puzzle of Western Social Sciences. Basically, what is social science? It is the study of human societies. So there are many different societies. There is the Aztecs, the Incas, the Zulus, the Chinese, the Persian, the Thai, Islamic society. So are the same law applicable to all societies? No, obviously not. These are all different societies. So what is this Western social science? Well, it takes European societies and as the perfect model and says that the lessons from Europeans apply to all societies. Now this is obviously false, and the results you get from this are obviously stupid results. But we don't recognize that because we have too much respect for the West, and the West does not recognize that because they are too self-centered, too Eurocentric. They think that European is the ideal model for all societies, so everything that applies to us applies to all human beings. So one very simple example is economic theory. According to economic theory, rational behavior requires that we maximize the lifetime pleasure achieved from the consumption of goods and services, and this is valid for all human beings. This is completely ridiculous. Actually, human beings do not maximize pleasure, so it's not valid empirically, and also you should not do this because the Quran teaches us that لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. So you have to spend that which you love, which means that you minimize the pleasure in order to make spiritual progress. Also, if you actually want to be happy, then it is very good to be kind and generous and to give things to others. You don't get pleasure out of drinking Coca-Cola, you get pleasure out of feeding the orphans. So this is a ridiculous theory, that utility maximization, but this very stupid theory is the foundation of all of economic theory and is taken to be very smart and very intelligent because it is supported by very complex and fancy mathematics. I have another paper called Origins of Western Social Sciences. All of Western social sciences is constructed on the basis of the denial of the creator, denial of purpose of creation, denial of the akhirah. Therefore, it places all emphasis on worldly results and denies any values to ethics, morals, and the akhirah. And this leads to the necessity, we Muslims cannot accept these social sciences, so we have to create an alternative, and I have provided some guidance on how we can do this following the methodology of Ibn Khaldun, and I have called this Ulumul Umran in honor of Ibn Khaldun. So we need to develop our own alternative to social sciences. So what are the fundamental principles of this Ulumul Umran? We start by understanding that all of the creation of the God is the family of God, and Allah Ta'ala loves best those who serve His family. We must build human society on the basis of cooperation, generosity, social responsibility. If you just look at these terms and you look at the world around you, see how different this is. Our Sharia gives us Usul al-Fiqh, which gives us the basis for Ulum al-Imran, and it guides us onto how we can create a good society. It starts with the family, the neighborhood, the community, this is opposed to the Darwinian principles of competition, selfishness, greed, individualism, and hedonism, which is the basis of European social science. I have a course called Islamic Statistics. I have shown that conventional statistics was created by racists, Galton and Fisher. They wanted to prove that the Western races, the white races, are superior to the other races, and they created statistics to try to prove this. And the methods of statistics are designed to prove something which is false. And this leads to fundamental defects in the structure of statistics and econometrics, and I have created a course which provides an alternative to this. There is a rapidly developing field of Islamic psychology which creates a four-dimensional model of human being. It says that we have ruh, and we have nafs, and we have aql, and we have qalb, and it explains these are people who are practicing psychologists, and they have used this model, and they have found that this is much better description of human beings, and it creates it allows us to treat human beings in a much better way than Western models. So you can look up, there are many different interesting talks about how practicing clinical psychologists have found that the Islamic model of human beings provides much better guidance on how to treat psychological disease and how to create, how to improve the human welfare. So there are many videos and talks on this. So I think this is almost the last slide. There is a huge amount of work that we Muslims have to do. We have to rebuild all of social sciences on Islamic foundations, and we have to harness all of the physical sciences, and we have to use this for the service of the creation of God. Today, physical science is used to oppress and to harm and to create profits for corporations by harming the public. In fact, there is enough money available, enough resources available to feed, house, and clothe billions of hungry and homeless people today in accordance with the principles of life harmony. We have to stop the wars against the people and the animals and the planet, and this requires changing the basis of social science, because today social science, Western social science, is based on the laws of the jungle. Everybody fighting each other, and everybody with power trying to get more power, everybody with money trying to get more money. Instead, Islam teaches us that people who have more money, they should give to the people who have less money. That is harmony. And so to achieve this harmony, the message of God is central, and we have to rebuild knowledge on the basis, on the solid foundations of the Quran and the Hadith. And so we can conclude by this dua: Allahumma akhrijni min al-dhulumat al-wahmi wa akrimni bi-nur. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So I think this is where I will stop, and now we can open the talk for discussion.